Today I'm painting a Lord of Contagion, I think he's called. But specifically I'm doing speed painting techniques. So the very first speed painting technique is zenithal your miniature. I primed this dude black, and then from above I primed him white, and then I even went a step further on this guy and not only just sprayed from above with white, but I sprayed specifically a strong spray right here on his face, on his head area, so that typically when a model's sitting on the ground or sitting on the table, this is the part you're going to see. So I want that to be the brightest. Second thing I did was, because if you're speed painting an entire miniature, that means you got to base the miniature also, so I have a second base separate, so this is going to be his final base. As soon as I finish the paint job, I'll pop him off and put him on this base. And that's actually where I'm going to start, because if you're going to use any sort of texture or anything, you want to get that started immediately. For instance, like if you're participating in our speed paint competition tomorrow, you have an hour to fully paint and base a miniature. So your drying time is severely limited. So you want to get your texture paint, the thing that's going to take the longest to dry, going. Alternatively, don't use texture paint. It's another option. I have decided to use it on this one, and if it still isn't dry with about 10 minutes to go, what I'll probably do is scrape it off and go a different route. But for now, I'm going to use texture paint. So first thing I did, using Gorthor brown, the best brown ever made, I just painted the base. Yippee, we did it. This is just to give a nice solid undercoat to the texture paint. A, I'm going to use some crackle medium, and so we don't want the white primer showing through. But B, also, just with normal texture paint, if there's a thin area or what have you, you don't want the white showing through. You'd rather have a nice brown color. So now I'm going to be talking fast in this episode, by the way. I apologize if it's too fast for some people, but got to go quick. So I'm using Grelin Earth and Armageddon Dust. This is a crackle paint, means you put it down, it dries, it cracks. This is just a texture. You put it down, takes 25 years to dry, and then you have a nice texture. So I'm going to take the crackle paint, and I'm just going to put it in a couple places. Can't make it too thick, because drying time's only an hour. Normally, I could use, like, some sort of method to dry these, like put them next to a hairdryer or something. But, because I don't want to have the hairdryer going the entire stream, I won't do that. Alright, so there, as you can see, I put the crackle medium in a couple places. So this is going to break up, or as it dries, it's going to crack. Let me see if I can get you an example of that. Like on this guy. You can see right here, just some cracks in it. That's what's going to happen. Oh my god, he's basing. Yeah, I am. I'm even starting with basing. So now I'm going to the Armageddon Dust. It's just texture paint. I'm going to put this on the base everywhere that the crackle medium isn't. Just make sure to get right up to the edge of this stuff. Not going to leave it too thick because, again, drying time is severely limited. In this case, or in the case of tomorrow's speed paint competition, the base wouldn't technically have to be dry to be done, because you're just taking pictures and submitting them. It's generally a good idea for it to be dry, though, because finish of paint changes as it dries and blah, blah, blah. And if you were in person, people are going to be handling your miniature, most likely, to judge it. So it's always a good idea to paint to be completely dry by the end. Alright, so there's the texture. As you can see, the crackle bits are sticking through there. So now we're just going to leave that to dry. I'll put it back here, sort of in indirect sunlight. I don't know if that even helps. Who knows? But now let's move on to the miniature. So, got this nice Nurgle dude here. I'm starting with Plague Bearer Flesh. And I haven't used Plague Bearer Flesh in a couple days, so I gotta shake it up. And this is wasting time. Okay. So this is going on all the armor. Everywhere? Oh, I lied. I'm not starting with this. Here's second tip. First tip, do the base first. Second tip, pre-highlight. So I'm using some vampiric highlight. This pre-highlighting is only for if you're doing contrast paint, like I am, or glazing, if you want to get fancy. So we're gonna go some places where we know we're gonna put contrast down, and we're just gonna highlight. So I'm just going to go along the edges here, go along the top shapes and stuff like that. If you're doing non-contrast paint, what you instead want to do, this won't help you because you're fully non-transparent, opaque, that's the word. Paint will cover this up. So what you want to do instead, if you're doing normal paint, is you want to only edge highlight the top third of the miniature. Everything else, dry brush it or highlight it in a different way. Any highlighting technique, either edge highlighting or wet blending or anything like that, only do that on the top third of the miniature. And that's how you can save some time. And so I'm only going to pre-highlight on the top third of this miniature also. It's basically chest up. And then you also want to do your more time consuming techniques on the big features. So top third, but also this axe isn't technically in the top third, but it's like, you know, you're not going to look at this miniature and miss the giant axe. So you want to do it for that too. There we go. And I'm not going to do it on the back side because who cares? The first thing you're going to see on this guy is the front. I am going to do it. I should say I'm not going to do it on the back side of the axe. I am going to do it on the back side of this thing. There's no image, though, that I'm going to take of this guy if I was submitting him for a competition, say. I'm going to take pictures of him flat on the ground, so I'll take a picture there, take a picture there, take a picture there, take a picture there. I'm never going to really have an image of the back of that axe, so I have no reason to spend my time on it if I'm limited in time. Obviously, if you're in a paint competition where you have essentially, for all intents and purposes, unlimited time, then yes, you should absolutely highlight it. But with an hour, don't focus on that. Just going to highlight this smoke real quick. Did that already. Right there. Okay, done. So, that was pre-highlighting. Check chat real quick. So if we're adding basing materials, does that count against our time? Or only if we're painting the base? Or does painting the texture stuff count separately from either of those? So when you start the competition, your base must be blank. Blank. Can have primer on it, nothing else. Wow, focus maybe? There we go. Primer on it, nothing else. If you're putting tufts on, you don't have to paint them, obviously. You don't have to paint anything you put on your base. But adding paint to your miniature must be done within that hour. The only thing that can be done after the hour is gluing the miniature to the base. Okay, now we're going to go to the Plague Bearer Flesh. And I guess maybe I didn't really answer your question. If the question is, can we put texture or rocks or things on the base pre-competition, the answer is no. Okay. So I'm going to take this Plague Bearer Flesh, and I'm just going to put it all over this guy's armor. Being careful, but not too careful. In my experience, it's faster to go back and fix a small mistake rather than doing your absolute best to avoid every single mistake. Trying to avoid every single mistake will slow you down more than if you have to go back and just add a quick brush layer of primer really fast. So I'm being careful because I don't want to have to redo too much of the miniature, obviously. But if I get a little bit of green where it doesn't belong, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, this Plague Bearer Flesh is an awesome color. It is really nice. And it's one of the contrast paints that changes the most depending on what primer color you put it over. Like, for instance, that's the same color on this guy's armor and on this guy's armor. Exact same color. But this is over a zenithal that's mostly black. This is a zenithal that's mostly white, and you can see how completely different those colors are. So, it's one of probably, I don't know if it is my favorite contrast paint. I think Snakebite Leather or Talisar Blue holds that, but it is definitely up there as one of my favorites. And so the other thing, the next tip I will say is that you want to be monitoring the clock when you're doing things for this painting competition. That's obvious. If you're doing anything timed, you want to be monitoring the clock. But specifically, you want to be monitoring the clock to know when it's time to move on from something. If you're in a base coating stage and there is no color besides primer in a spot, you can't move on. You have to finish the base coat. But if you've been, if you've been at a certain piece of the miniature, like say the armor or something, and your base coat's on and you've spent more than 5 minutes on it, doing highlighting or shading or whatever, move on and do something else. You can always come back if you have more time, but it's always better to have your basics done before you start focusing on more minute details, which might be an obvious thing, but it's something people can focus in on. At least for me, when I paint, if I were painting this guy in not an hour and not rushing, I would paint the base coat of the armor, then I would highlight the armor, then I would shade the armor, and etc., etc. But right now, I'm just trying to get all the base coats in. So now I'm doing Snakebite Leather. I'm just going to do it on the weapon handle here. The wrapping, I guess. There we go. Fine. Just checking to see if anything else could potentially be this color. I don't think so. Good. Then I will do the cape. Am I going to do a two-toned cape this time? I think I am. So I'm going to get ultramarine blue. One of the worst contrast colors. And I say this every time I use it. One of the worst contrast colors. And I think I might be wrap on the inside of the shaft. Oh, right there. Yeah, I'll come back to that if I need to. That's the other thing. Because these are going to be pictures, you can sort of cheat and just not take a picture that can see that. Sort of cheating. A little bit cheating. But, not really cheating. You're just working with the conditions of the event. It's free, so if someone feels cheated, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, what I was saying was, I say that this ultramarine blue is one of the worst contrast colors every time I use it. And I think that might be me just repeating what I hear on the internet, because I seem to use it an awful lot. Yes, I definitely appreciate it. Because I definitely will go back and repaint that or put color on that. But it is something to keep in mind that you don't have to paint which people aren't going to see. So, in a 1 hour speed competition, painting the Aquila and chest behind someone's bolter is the worst possible idea. Unless you absolutely have time to do that. In an hour, I don't think you have an opportunity to do that. I could be wrong, but Just reflects your deep desire to serve Lord McCrag. Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's it. Alright, so I'm going to get the underside here. Got most of that anyway. Close enough. There's that. I'm going to get Flesh Terror Red and do the upper half of the cloak with this. This is such a strange, like, cloak this guy's wearing. It's like cloth, chainmail cloth. Like, who's wearing a chainmail cape? Why is that a thing? Especially as a chaos follower. Just don't run away. Never present your back to the enemy. Problem solved. If the guy shows up behind you, turn around. If you're fighting a guy on each side, turn sideways. If you're fighting a guy on three guys, you're probably dead anyway, so it doesn't matter. So this spot is one of the spots that you can be super rough with because it's butting up against the chainmail, which is going to be a metallic color, which will cover over any mistake I make. Up here next to the green, though, I want to be careful. And this miniature is a good example of another thing you need to think about for speed painting competitions is the balance between how cool your miniature is going to look and how much space is on your miniature that you have to paint. So for instance, this model is big. He's on a 50mm base. He is quite chunky. Got a lot to paint. He might be pushing it in terms of what someone can realistically paint to a high standard in an hour. I decided to push myself, and I think I can get there. But it's definitely something to consider. If you think that it's going to take you a little longer, then you want to go with a smaller miniature who you're going to end up being able to make look cooler, rather than a larger miniature that just on its own might look cooler, but that you aren't going to be able to execute on. So there has to be a decision made about that in the beginning. Yeah, grot. If you could make a sweet looking grot, you could go all out with a grot. You could wet blend that entire grot in an hour probably. And he might look way cooler than this guy with just some contrast base coats and some pre-highlights. Alright, now I'm going to do the guts. I'm going to use Nazdrag Yellow to start. Just going to cover the guts with this color. The green isn't quite dry down here. That's okay. It'll mix in. I'm going to paint this Nurgling that's being stepped on in this color also. Basically, I want the flesh of anything to be... I'm going to get this tentacle. The flesh of anything to be a different color than the armor. But I still want it to be sort of in this family of colors. So light green and yellow are sort of near each other. So got those tentacles. So get the rest of this guy. Lovely. Just double checking. Oh, there's some more tentacles here in the middle. Baby poop brown. Yep, that's basically what this color is. I just noticed that this model's built like not good. That tentacle is supposed to be in that hole. It's okay. I will confess I did not build this model. So I don't know who built it, though, so I can't shame them. It's probably not a good idea to shame people for making mistakes anyway. I guess it depends how big the mistake is. Alright, there's the guts color done. I'll wait for that to dry. I'm going to do the smoke next. I'm going to start with Aethermatic Blue. I like this color for ethereal smoke. I'll come back over it later with another color if I have time, but I'm going to start with this. Should probably be on camera. It's kind of the whole point. Okay. Alright, there's Aethermatic Blue. And some more up here. I just got an excellent idea while doing this for a April Fool's stream. I wonder what day April 1st is on this coming year. Because if it was on a day that I'm streaming, that would be ideal. But if it's on a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, that would be less ideal. So I guess I've got a 3 out of 7 chance. I like my odds. It could be better. I like my odds. Alright, there's that. Now I'm going to do Skeleton Horde all over anything that's bone. And, oh yeah, my base over here. Just going to check my base real quick. Texture's drying nicely. Crackle has just started to begin cracking. And we are 24 minutes in. I'm not going to finish. Alright. Putting this now on the skulls. That's some smoke that I forgot, so we're going to make it brown for right this second. We'll come back later. I'm going to count this as a skull. Anything else? Bone over here? No. No, I guess not. Alright, that's about it then. Oh, there's a skull right here. I'll do that in bone color. I'll just paint around it. Alright. I'm going to move to some metallics now. I'm going to start with Brass Scorpion. And I'm going to do all this stuff, all this. Oh, there's a big old bone sticking out of his shoulder, Greg. What the heck? This whole thing right there and this whole thing right there should have been bone colored. It's alright. I'll come back. So all this detail I'm going to do in this color. This is technically a detail on a color or on a spot that I already have color on, but it's the Nurgle symbol, so I think it's important that I distinguish that. So I'm going to spend the time to do that. Doomed. Okay. Then just look in here. Alright, I'm going to do something. Do an experiment here. I'm going to get my Basilicanum Gray. And I'm going to paint basically everything else with this. And then I'm going to come back and distinguish some things afterward. So I'll start with the weapon here. So I was originally going to do all this stuff up here in several metallic colors, but because of the time, I'm going to adjust, and I'm going to do it in this color and then do all the rivets and spikes and stuff in the metallic colors. Should still end up really with the same amount of pop almost, but it will save me some time on the actual painting. Okay, then all this stuff. And if this gets on the blue, it's not a big deal. When it dries, you'll hardly be able to tell the difference. Good. Chainmail here. Okay, and then this last little bit down here. I get all of this? Yep. Alright, so there's that done. I'm going to go back to the skeleton horde and get these horns on the side here. Good. Okay. Oh, what the heck? I didn't get the back of his helmet. Genius. I'm going to go back to Plaguebearer Flesh and get the back of his helmet. Wonderful. There we go. Alright. Now I'm going to come back with the Brass Scorpion again. And I'm just going to start painting in some details on top of the Basilicum Gray that we just did. So I'm going to get these gears. And so now officially everything is colored. And so now we can go back and start adding more colors on top of the colors. Let's see if I can be on camera again, being a point. All right. So then what I was talking about earlier is you want to focus your attention on the top third of the miniature. And in this case, I'm doing the top third and the weapon here. So I'm not going to worry about the detail on his legs and stuff until I'm sure that all the detail on this part of the miniature is done. Good. I'm going to do these big spikes this color also. Dog, I heard you like colors, so you put colors on your colors. Yep. Colors on colors. It's the key to a good paint job. It's adding colors to existing colors. Also, going to put some of this bronze on these sensor looking things. Another thing to keep in mind, since as you can see this is not on the top third of the miniature, if you have repeated details, for instance like these plague sensors that are on the part of the miniature you're focusing on and somewhere else, you need to paint the ones that are somewhere else also, because the same detail looking two different ways is going to jump out at the person judging. So if you paint a plague sensor a color, all the plague sensors need to get that same color. Otherwise it will be obvious that you didn't get to them in this instance, obviously, whatever repeated detail you might have. So for instance, if you're painting a Space Marine and you had a purity seal up top and then 3 at the bottom, you'd need to paint the 3 at the bottom the same way you painted the one at the top, even though it doesn't technically count as focusing on the top third of the model. Okay, I'm going to go to silver now. I'm going to use Iron Warriors for this. It's a very dark silver. Alright. Whoa, too much paint on the brush. I'm just going to overbrush. Apparently I'm going to do more than that. Just going to overbrush this chainmail with this color, just to give it a little bit of a sheen. Get the chains also while I'm at it. The Basilicum Gray that's on this chainmail will really already sort of sell like silver, but putting this over top will give it that shine, so when someone turns the miniature or something, it'll reflect and make that base of Basilicum Gray look a lot more silver. Just going to put it in a couple places up here and along here. Then I'm going to put it right here. It's very, very carefully. In there and in there. Alright. Then I'm going to look at the time. 35 minutes in. Alright, I still got a little bit of time. So I'm going to put it down. Gotta get the excess water off my brush. I'm going to put it down on this detail down here. And then I'm going to switch back to the copper. And I'm going to do a couple more things with this. There's a little detail in there. Couple wires in the leg here. Just gonna really quickly do the metal frame on his leg because it is sticking out. It's not in shadow basically when the miniature is standing up, and this is framed right through this hole in the axe, so I'm going to do this one as well. Okay. I'll get this little Nurgle beetle thing down here. There's some wires up here. Two little rivet things right there. I guess I'll pick them out. Alright. So now need some Gorthor Brown. There's some Gorthor Brown on the base actually, through the crackle. But the next step we can use Gorthor Brown, it doesn't matter. Can really use any color. I was gonna use a contrast color, but sure, let's use Gorthor Brown. So I'm not using a contrast color, so I'm just gonna get my brush super soaking wet and get it in the Gorthor Brown. Get it super soaking wet again. So now I sort of have this like slurry of Gorthor Brown on my model, or on my brush here. Just gonna wick the excess off. Make sure I have the right consistency of paint here. There we go. And then I'm just gonna get it all over here like that. And I'm going to take a not in use brush and just come back and wipe it off, but it's sat down in some of the cracks and stuff. Just going to do the same thing again down here. Just sort of paint it all over. Get the brush we're not using. Come back in and sort of half wipe it off, half spread it around. Then I'm going to use that dirty brush to do the other side. And do some up here. Go back to the Gorthor Brown in the water. Up here to his head. Back to the brush that's dry. Might have to rinse the brush that's dry off a couple times. Just want to preserve that color up at the top there. Then back to the Gorthor Brown mix, and just gonna put it in here. And up there a little bit more. Okay, that looks good. So then I'm going to take my texture paint that we used before. I'm actually not going to use this one. I'm going to use the Sterling Mud. I'm going to get some of this on my brush and dip it in some water. And then I'm going to do it, I guess I'll do it on the axe first. I'm going to do sort of the same thing I just did. But now there's some texture on my brush here. So I'm just going to kind of do this. Then take another dry brush and pull it back off. This dry brush is going to soak up the pigment, but not all of the texture. So some of that texture will stick around and help us out on that axe here. Can also just on the flat area like this, just do this, and that'll leave some of the texture but take the pigment off. Alright, so then I need to look. I don't know if that technically counts as an eye. I guess it does. I'm just going to take some Flesh Terror Red and check the time, 41 minutes. Okay, I'm just going to dot some Flesh Terror Red into these little eye holes here. Sure. Just so there's something up there. Alright, then I'm going to take my Nurgle's Rot, give it a good shake, and I'm going to put this in a couple places on the miniature. So definitely down here in the guts area, put it down here. Down here on the Nurgling, who's being squished. Put it in some of these spots on the armor. You're in another spot where whoever built this did not do a fantastic job. I'm just going to fill it with pus. There you go. Nurgle, or gap filler, brought to you by Nurgle. And put it some there also, like that's leaking. A little bit here, some up here on this head. Be on this guy, a little bit there. Put a little bit in here on the teeth of this thing. And then maybe that'll be fine. So this whole weathering step is another speed painting tip. Because your speed painting is usually going to be messier than your normal painting. So weathering can just sort of play into that fact that things are already going to be messy. And so you make things purposely look messy. So things that are accidentally messy don't look as bad. I don't know how true that really is, but it works in my head. That'll work for me. Just a little bit too much right there. Just clean that up. Put some here maybe. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to do a very, very, very selective edge highlight. I'm going to do that with some alien goo. I would like to do it in a different color, but I don't know where that color is right now. So I'm just going to do it in this. This is pretty close to what I would have used, so not super worried about it. And like I said, it's very selective, so if it doesn't look the best, not a huge deal. So first thing I'm going to do it on is this bit of his head up here. And do it on the other side also. And do it on these. Basically just these edges that are on the top of the miniature. Just do like one down here. Couple around the battle damage here. One on the shoulder pad. There we go. All right. So we have, what are we at here? 46, 14 minutes, okay? Time for just a couple little things. I'm going to grab some Rakarth flesh. And I'm just going to put this on the bone in a couple places. So I'll put it down here on this bone. Just down here like this. Doesn't have to be super consistent, just somewhere down there. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. On the skulls, I'll just dot it around up here on the skulls. Down here, right in there. That looks good on this skull real quick. Back of the axe shaft. Oh, you mean have I put color on it yet? No, I haven't. I'll do that right now. I got a little bit of time. Snakebite leather, go, go, go. think. There we go. And just get in here. There we go. Now there's still some that doesn't have paint on it, but it's more hidden now. Alright, so we got 13 minutes. Alright, so he's going to have to be done where he is. Because we got to spend this next little bit. No, wait, I got to fix one thing. We're going to have to spend the rest of this on the base, which hopefully has started to crack. If not, well, you know. Just got to put some blue on this part of the smoke that I missed here. There we go. That'll work. Alright, so he's basically where he's going to be. Too much. It's better. So I'm going to grab the base, and we're going to see how it's looking. Please be cracked. Please be cracked. Oof. Not as cracked as I would like. Alright. It may just be because I put it on too thin, so it may not be going to crack, which is fine. Right. So I'm going to get some Tollarn sand. And I'm just going to paint over both bits of the paint here. I'm going to pull him out of the paint handle so I can use it for the base. There we go. Without bumping the camera too much. Alright, Tollarn sand. Gonna do it over everything. Yeah, I agree. It should have at least started cracking by now, so I may have just put it on too thin. We'll still have a couple little cracks in here, and once I put some ink on there, it'll accentuate those small cracks a little bit at least. But at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing in the world. We don't need the cracks to have a successful base. Alright, there you go. So it's going to dry just a little bit. I'm just going to take a look back at him. Make sure... Actually, while that base is drying... How many minutes do I have? 11 minutes. Alright, while that base is drying just a little bit, I'm going to come with a Techless Blue and Wild Rider Red. And just do some super quick dry brushing on the cloak here. So I'm going to start with the red. Make sure my brush is completely dry. Get as much paint off as I can here. And then I'm just going to very lightly get this on. Doesn't have to be crazy, just so there's something there. Do a little bit on this side too. Okay. And then same thing with the blue. Just get a little bit of it. Should be on camera. A little bit down here. Not quite enough. There we go. Okay. That should be fine. Then just spruce it up a little bit. Alright, back to the base, which hopefully has dried enough. Not quite. Alright, it's going to have to be hair dryer now. Like I said, if this wasn't on stream, I'd be using the hair dryer a lot more. And you should use a hair dryer if you're entering the competition. It will help you exponentially decrease dry time. Alright, good enough. I'm gonna get some aggro stones. I'm gonna put this more or less all over. Just mix it with a little bit of water on my brush because I don't want it that brown, I think. We do have a couple little cracks in here, but nothing major. But that's okay. That is okay. Alright, then I am going to take some of this quintessential Nurgle stuff and just sprinkle a little bit of it around the base here and there. Doesn't have to be super thick, just so this doesn't look like a completely boring dirt base. It's got something going on here. There we go. Then I'm just going to take a tiny little bit of this Tesseract Glow, which is super, super bright. And just going to touch it into the middle of these piles here. Just to give them a little more pop. There we go. All right. Then I think for tufts, I think I'm just going to use a couple of these. I'm not sure what they are. Wasteland or something. They're like a mixture of sort of a wheat color and a darker color. Just going to stick a couple down. Just using the self-adhesive and the wet paint to stick them. Maybe one more, maybe two more. I'll do one more. Right there, that looks good. So then, the attempt to pop him off his base. If you glued your dude to a base, for instance, before you were thinking about this competition, this can be sometimes a struggle. I'm going to take my Sharp X-Acto, which is a tip that you should... Hang on. How much time do I have? All right, I got time to tell this tip. So, yeah, I personally think you should keep a Sharp X-Acto and a dull X-Acto around. A dull X-Acto for anything that you need to be cutting towards your hand. For instance, getting little extra bits of sprue off of something. I use a dull blade so that I can cut straight into my thumb without any trouble. If you cut into your thumb with this thing, it will take your thumb with it. But in this case, I want a Sharp X-Acto. See? No, he's not pegged. To get this guy off the base here. I've almost got this foot off. Just want to go slow until you get the nice pop like that. And then go to the other foot. And do the same thing. Man, this guy is glued. I wonder if this guy got plastic cemented on. Or just plastic glue, maybe. Because he is. I'm cutting through the base here. I'm not popping him off his base. That's what you get for buying used models. There we go. Alright. Doesn't look like it needs any cleanup. Excellent. So I'm going to take some super glue. Some normal super glue, not plastic glue. Alright, I'm going to get my base here, and that looks good. I'll stick him right there. Nope. Right there. That looks better. I blame Greg Hogan. Wow. Alright, there you go. There's him. He needs a little bit of cleanup, and by that I mean there's a little bit of a gap between his foot and the base. So normally I would use texture paint, but for this I'm going to use Nurgle's Rot. Oh, he is not stuck down very well. That's okay. Just going to pile some Nurgle's Rot up here around his foot. And I'm going to cheat with the other foot. I'm going to take another small tuft. And I'm going to stick it right up against his foot here, so you won't see the gap. Holy crap, I got to paint his base for him. Okay, so he's drying on his base currently, so I can't do the normal thing that I do, which is hold him and do the base for him. So, how many minutes do I have? 2 minutes! Perfect, look at this. Alright, Abaddon Black. Get the brush wet. Get your Abaddon Black. Make sure it's not too wet. And then we're just gonna do this. This is the worst way to do this. Absolute worst way. I didn't think this through at all. It's alright, we're just gonna have to go with it. If he pops off his base, I'll put him back on the base. I did say that coming off the base, or being glued on the base, could be done after the hour, so I could technically do this, but a little more paint. He's very wiggly on his base. This basing stuff is so wet. The super glue is not drying properly. That's okay though. For the picture, he's done. Alright, we did it. Now how do we get him up off the base, up off the table? This is going to be interesting. Will this glue hold for this long? The answer was yes. Alright, so there he is. He's done. He's still... The glue affixing him to the base is a little wet still, so he might try to fall off. But otherwise, he's done. I think for as big as this model is, for an hour, I think it is a definitely a worthy result. Paint competition winning, perhaps not. But worthy, yes. There he is from the back. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully, you got at least a couple pointers out of this, even if it's stuff you already knew. Maybe you had forgotten it and be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea or something. Or maybe you learned something brand new. Maybe you learned nothing, but you just enjoyed watching. Either way, no matter what, thank you everybody for watching. I will be back next week, Monday at 8 p.m., painting something Warhammer related. Wednesday in the Galactic page, a week from today, right back here doing something. Who knows? Next week, we'll think about it then. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.